This video contains flashing lights and colors.
When you think of lost media, you might think of some obscure Nickelodeon short or a cancelled video game. There's certainly been no shortage of it over the years, and there's even an in-depth wiki dedicated to it. But what you may not have thought of as lost media are the many dark rides that have come and gone over the years at amusement and theme parks. For over 100 years, dark rides have been some of the most fascinating theme park attractions out there. But though many of them are well documented on YouTube, some of the older ones have since fallen into relative obscurity. Today, we're going to be taking a look at just 10 of these rides that are now, or have been until just recently, undocumented by video cameras, either partially or the whole ride. So rev up those keyboards and get your creepypastas ready, because this is 10 lost media dark rides right here on Theme Park Crazy. Number 10. The Fifth Dimension at England's Chessington World of Adventures. Have you ever wondered what a dark ride based on computer viruses would look like? Well, in the late 1980s, Chessington World of Adventures had a ride that was exactly that. Designed by Madame Tussauds Studios, yes, the Wax Museum Madame Tussauds, this was made before the company's merger with Merlin Entertainments, who owns Chessington World of Adventures. This dark ride aimed to have an ultra-modern concept, taking guests on an adventure inside a computer. Yes, a computer. Though the ride is more commonly remembered as taking place inside of a television, that wasn't the original opening day plotline. For decades, the original version of the attraction was considered lost media, but thanks to the Euro Theme Park Archive, the ride's original rendition can now be experienced on YouTube. Sponsored by Japanese conglomerate Hitachi, this ride was actually pretty meta in terms of its sponsorship, and it was incorporated in a unique way. Now, the general story of the ride is that Hitachi is taking you on a trip into the world of computers. But right off the bat, you can tell something is wrong. In the pre-show, an announcer from Hitachi addresses rumors of a, quote, terrifying computer-created nightmare hiding out in the complex to which our customers are being sacrificed. He insists the rumors are, quote, completely fanciful, highly exaggerated, and probably not even true. Kind of a bizarre way to integrate a corporate sponsor. The whole setup basically implies that Hitachi builds a computer system so poorly managed that a giant digital monster has taken over the facility and may be eating their customers. Not exactly the kind of message companies want attached to their brand. Once you board your ride vehicle, you are taken inside Hitachi's computer system. But instead of a nice leisurely trip, guests end up on the quote-unquote dark side of the computer where anything can happen and almost certainly will. You're given this warning by an extremely off-putting robot named Zap-O-Matic.
You should all having a nice time, riding around the computer world, not crashing through the giant computer screen.
This guy was a fully automated computer troubleshooter and the main protagonist. The design of this figure is just nuts. Roller skates, puppy shorts, overalls, a furry scarf, a handkerchief, yellow gloves, an aviator hat, and uncanny human facial features. Those teeth probably caused the bite of 87, which is coincidentally enough when this ride first opened. Though he's technically the protagonist, he admittedly is pretty casual about telling guests they're in danger.
If you happen to notice any killer robots or even a giant green slobbering monster with laser beam eyes and laser sharp teeth, that's the one that ate the last trainload of people. You will let me know, won't you?
This ride definitely had dry British humor. Believe it or not, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy author Douglas Adams was said to be involved with the ride's development. However, the extent to which he contributed to the script is unknown. After Zap-O-Matic's introduction, guests entered a dark void before ending up in a place called the Arctic Wasteland. Menacing snow creatures with breathing apparatuses surrounded your vehicle armed with what appeared to be bazookas. There was also a woolly mammoth in the background. Zap-O-Matic swoops in for a shootout with the snow creatures, but damages his vehicle to Zapmobile in the process. Eventually, guests found themselves in the slimy swamp. Zap-O-Matic would warn them not to make any loud noises. But just then, the creatures of the swamp spot the guests and say they'll never get out. One of these creatures looks like a melting rotten pineapple with a monster's face, and it emerged from a large hole in the floor. Truly a strange visual. After escaping from the swamp, guests would head into a cave where punk-o-matic robots and a giant green slathering monster would appear. The monster's name was, no joke, the giant green slathering monster. Talk about to the point. Guests were instructed to push the button in front of them to activate the vehicle's gun. With that, the computer system deleted the monster, and Zap-O-Matic led the train back to the station. Upon the attraction's debut, many found the story to be strange and convoluted, especially children. As a result, this version of the attraction would close just a year after it opened, later being replaced with a version most people remember. For the most part, the set pieces and characters were kept the same. The story, however, was reworked to make it easier for kids to understand. It went from taking guests inside a computer to taking them inside of a television. Zap-O-Matic was now a television repair robot. A new 2D animated pre-show was added to explain the story. Instead of going on a doomed tour, you were sent in to save Zap-O-Matic as part of a robot rescue service. Moreover, a new animatronic figure was added to replace the giant green slathering monster as the main villain. This character, a fantasy creature named the Gorg, looked like the offspring of Pizza the Hut and Grandmother Willow from Disney's Pocahontas. Maybe I'll give this ride its own video one day, and the same goes for the rest of the rides on this list actually, because there are more details I'd love to go into. But for now, I mainly wanted to cover the original version of this ride. Once again, the attraction was a truly odd way to incorporate a sponsor, but now I want to discuss this video's sponsor, Snaxy. Alright, you know how you could get rewards by spending money on your credit card? Well, believe it or not, you can get rewards by playing mobile games. Check this out. Snaxy is an app that lets you download, play, and earn rewards. Game publishers who want a bigger user base are willing to pay a fee to Snaxy for engaged new players. Snaxy then passes those earnings on to the users. With Snaxy, all you have to do is sign up, swipe through their select mobile games, pick a game you like, and keep playing to earn coins. And there are plenty of different games to choose from: RPGs, farming games, puzzle games, and much more. I've personally been playing this word search game for a while, and I seriously can't get enough of it. Once you've earned $25 in Snaxy coins, you can cash out for all sorts of rewards. These include gift cards for services like Netflix and Amazon, and coins can even be redeemed for PayPal money. That's right, over time you can actually get paid for playing mobile games. So whether you're waiting for your food to arrive or just chilling around the house during a blizzard, you can make your downtime paid back. With your mobile device, you can click on my link in the description and download the app today. By simply signing up, you can get a bonus worth up to $10. If you love mobile gaming, you can download, play, and earn rewards today with Snaxy. Special thanks to Snaxy for sponsoring this video. Number 9. The Adventures of Dreamieland at England's Trafford Centre. Now, I have discussed this ride in a previous video, but I want to emphasize the hunt for this lost media. As it turns out, one YouTuber is responsible for uncovering this forgotten attraction. For decades, this ride was an undeniable piece of lost media. Pretty much no footage was publicly available, and for most people, it survived only as a vague childhood memory or a few scattered images online. Or at least it was, until YouTube user Lauren Hardy decided to dig deeper. After remembering the ride from her childhood, she began to research it herself. She tracked down old articles, as well as former traces of the attraction online. Most importantly, she found an email address on an archived website of the attraction. This email address led her directly to the ride's creator, Aranda Ricks. Rick shared promotional footage of the ride. The first time in decades video of the ride was made public. I also reached out to Miss Ricks, who allowed me to use the footage in my video. I'll link Lauren Hardy's full video in the description because she really deserves credit for her detective work. Now let's get on to the ride itself. Rather than being part of a theme park, Dreamieland operated as a standalone attraction inside Manchester's Trafford Centre Mall. The ride centered on a species of CBeebies-looking creatures called the Dreamies. Their job was to create happy thoughts and good dreams. Their enemies were known as the Guzzlers, led by the villainous Queen Gazella. She wanted to capture the Dreamies and spread nightmares instead. To stop the Guzzlers, riders boarded 4-person dark ride vehicles armed with light guns called Guzzler torches. The objective was simple: shoot the Guzzlers and transform them back into good guys. Honestly, the whole thing looked delightfully bizarre. The ride featured a series of colorful fantasy environments, including Candylands, spooky forests, Arabian-inspired scenes, and outer space. Among the standout characters were a vampire dream guzzler, a devil guzzler, a guzzler wearing a ripped-up sombrero, and strangely adorable giant mutant carrots. There was also this really creepy animatronic of what looked to be a fuzzy snake with a baby face. And the baby had fangs, by the way. The whole thing was intended to be an attraction of its own, with a sizable gift shop and a room for birthday parties. It's the kind of thing you'd see in a dream, and it was pretty ambitious. Sadly, Dreamieland only lasted a few years before closing, reportedly due to low attendance. Plus, it apparently cost £10 million to build, so turning a profit was arguably always going to be a challenge. But for an original interactive dark ride based on a completely original property, it was obvious that a huge amount of creativity and effort went into it. Thanks to Lauren Hardy's research, this strange little attraction is more well-known than ever. Her video certainly deserves more attention, and I'll put a link in the description so you could go check it out. Number 8. TV's family favorites at England's... Oh god, it's hard to say this with a straight face. Crinkly Bottom Theme Park. Seriously, did Susumu Gondowara from Yakuza make it? Well, no, but it does have to do with someone who's arguably just as disturbing as that character, Mr. Blobby. Originally, this hellspawn was created for a hidden camera segment on the show Noel's House Party, hosted by presenter Noel Edmonds. Essentially, celebrity guests would be told they're appearing on an ordinary children's show, but the show's mascot Mr. Blobby is a clumsy mess, constantly getting on their nerves. Though Edmonds initially portrayed the character himself, Mr. Blobby would become a regular on the show. Though the character was intentionally designed to look terrifying for comedic effect, he strangely enough became super popular with children. Well, some children, many still found him horrifying. Also, like a satanic Pokemon, all he can do is say his own name with a demonic-sounding voice filter like something out of Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead.
Oh, Blobby, Blobby, Blobby. Blobby! Oh, Blobby! You will die! One by one we will take you.
Still, despite being hated by many, he was undeniably popular. There was a video game, VHS tapes, and even a UK #1 hit song based on him. Eventually, Edmonds decided the character's popularity warranted a theme park, a few theme parks in fact. So a deal was made with the existing Cricket St. Thomas Wildlife Park in Somerset to add on themed areas based on British children's television shows.
Come and see us at Crinkly Bottom at Cricket St Thomas near Chard in Somerset. It's Britain's first TV theme park. Visit Mr. Blobby's house. See the wonderful wildlife parkland. Enjoy family fun in Blobbyland. Crinkly Bottom is 20 minutes from junction 25 on the M5 and 10 minutes from the A303.
There were live performances with Mr. Blobby and a walkthrough exhibit called Dun Blobbin'. This took guests through what was supposed to be Mr. Blobby's house, with truly bizarre and sometimes terrifying imagery. Just look at Mr. Blobby peeking his head out from the shower curtain. Look for a future video discussing this park and its history. Also, big shout out to dunblobbin.com, where you can find a huge collection of photos and descriptions of the old attractions. I'll link that website in the description as well. For this segment of the list, we're focusing on the indoor boat ride, TV's family favorites. With a ride system by WGH Transportation, this attraction sat guests in small circular boats. Passengers were taken through several scenes representing different kids' shows. These included a scene based on Bill and Ben the Flower Pot Men, The Clangers, The Magic Roundabout before Harvey You-Know-Who ruined it and turned it into Dougal, and there was even a Doctor Who scene with K9 and a Dalek. Furthermore, there was a scene based on Mr. Blobby as well. Though no video footage is known to exist of this scene, there are a couple of photos. There's this one on the Dunblobbin website, showing Mr. Blobby with an unfortunately placed stick holding him up. There's also this more eerie one posted by Pumpkinob on Twitter. This image portrays Mr. Blobby standing in front of what looks like a mannequin seated on a chair. The mannequin, or animatronic, is supposed to represent Noel Edmonds with his face obscured by a newspaper that reads, "May cause drowsiness." Eventually, Noel Edmonds pulled the Mr. Blobby license out of the park. In 1997, Mr. Blobby's likeness was removed, and on the ride, his scene was replaced by one featuring the popular character Noddy. As for the water ride system itself, it was later moved to Watermouth Castle, where it currently operates outdoors. The whole story of Crinkly Bottom has so many different layers to it, and I'd love to discuss it in a future video. Number 7. The original Peter Pan's flight at California's Disneyland. How on earth could one of the most popular dark rides on Earth be lost? Well, we're talking about the original version that opened with the park in 1955. When Disneyland first opened, it had 3 dark rides in Fantasyland: Snow White and Her Adventures, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and Peter Pan. As we discussed in my Alice in Wonderland video, Disneyland's opening day dark rides were much less advanced and less polished than they are today. This was due to the technical limitations of the 1950s, but they were still ahead of their time. For this segment of the list, we're talking about the one with perhaps the least amount of footage available for it: Peter Pan's Flight, or Peter Pan, or Peter Pan Flight. It had a few different names. Though the story is mostly the same as it is now, many of the effects were different. Like the current version, the ride started off in the Darling's bedroom, with your galleon flying out of the window just like the kids did in the movie. Now, the original version did not feature Peter Pan himself during the ride. Sure, he was included on a mural outside, but Peter Pan was nowhere to be seen during the course. Though including Peter Pan was reportedly considered during the ride's development, Imagineers decided it would be more interesting to put guests in the shoes of the main protagonists on Fantasyland's original dark rides. On this ride, you were meant to play the role of Peter Pan flying to Neverland. Unfortunately, guests at the time didn't understand the concept, and many simply wondered where the hell Peter Pan was. After the window, you then flew over a miniature model of London with Big Ben and Nelson's column, just like on the current version. After this, you flew over a large model of Neverland. So far as I know, the only photo that exists of this original model is one of an indigenous settlement. There's also this photo of Captain Hook's hideaway from a postcard, though I'm uncertain how old this photograph is. A major difference from the current version is that in the original, you actually flew through the left eye of Skull Rock. Apparently, this effect was achieved by partially constructing one half of the rock, with the other half being painted on a piece of fabric not seen in this photo. According to Yesterworld's video on the ride, it seemed as if the fabric was draped over the other half of the skull, with an opening in the fabric for the suspended track to pass through. After going through a cave, an irate figure of Captain Hook furiously demanded Smee to shoot down your ship. He certainly had a stick up his ass, literally. You then maneuvered between Smee and the crocodile as Smee attempted to shoot you down. After this scene, the ride just ended. Yes, this ride was made with limited time and money, so they were unable to incorporate more elements like the Mermaid Lagoon they originally wanted. Not long after its opening, the ride would be modified to feature new effects and scenery. One scene that got a big update was the bedroom. Here, a silhouette of Peter Pan was added, as well as family portraits of the Darlings and Nana the dog. Around 1970, new 3D buildings introduced a fascinating forced perspective illusion after exiting the window. As you traveled along the course, the buildings would get smaller and smaller. This made it feel like you were lifting up above the ground when you were simply traveling in a straight line. The Captain Hook figure was also said to be given the ability to move his left arm. Finally, the Smee and Crocodile figures were relocated on the layout. Apparently, the crocodile was given a moving jaw, though a photograph of the new figure has it in the old location. Sure, the version that exists now is great, but this original rendition is certainly more interesting to talk about. Number 6. The Haunted Mine at Nevada's MGM Grand Adventures. During the early 1990s, Las Vegas's population was heavily expanding, with more families moving in. To account for this, several developers aimed to diversify the city's tourism industry with more family-focused attractions. The idea was to appeal to the growth of the city and the influx in tourism among families. Many Vegas attractions aimed to compete with places like Disneyland, which was just about 4 hours away. One of these was MGM Grand Adventures, a movie-based theme park meant to be part of the MGM Grand Hotel project. This hotel was meant to replace the old MGM Grand and introduce several new themed experiences to it. As for the theme park, by the time it was built, the results were less than impressive for many. Compared to Universal Studios Florida or Disney's MGM Studios, this park was incredibly small and seriously lacking in attractions. Due to a restricted budget, it also lacked noticeable IPs even from MGM. Essentially, a bunch of rides were vaguely themed to movie genres, with some hilarious knockoff titles. For example, instead of Temple of Doom, there was a segment of a ride called Temple of Gloom. Still, there were a few highlights. The Backlot River Tour was pretty cool, and there were a couple of dark rides which, likely due to the park's short lifespan, have zero footage available of them in operation. The first is the Haunted Mine, with animatronics and effects by Valencia, California's Technifex. This attraction was pretty much a traditional straight-to-the-point dark ride about a haunted mine. Admittedly, there are plenty of Haunted Mine dark rides out there, such as the excellent Mine of Lost Souls at New Hampshire's Canopy Lake Park. From what we know about the effects though, this one was pretty elaborate from a design perspective. Although we don't have footage of the ride in operation, we do have some pretty good photos and behind-the-scenes footage provided by Technifex. According to the company, the ride's story centered on a group of hapless prospectors looking for gold on a sacred indigenous burial site. The prospectors accidentally opened a door to the world of the dead, and now their souls haunt the mine. You were sent on a tour of this mine, and you would discover its mysteries and evade vengeful spirits. Admittedly, the ride's plot was a bit of a relic of its time. The trope of portraying indigenous people as being supernatural was unfortunately common in many works of fiction at the time. That said, from a purely design-based perspective, there were some very unique effects on this ride. Among the animatronics was this giant spider with huge glowing eyes and what appeared to be crab claws. The claws were capable of opening and closing, and the spider loomed over guests below. It was a solid animatronic, and though we don't have video of the finished version, the behind-the-scenes footage is fascinating. The ride also featured several skeletons, which would pop up with the use of an actuator. One would sit upright, and another appeared to pull a lever. Another scene featured what appeared to be the trapped spirit of an indigenous person. This spirit was a projection, and he appeared to throw a tomahawk at passengers. Theme park historian George Browning said in his video that this effect was achieved through the use of a hologram. This made it look like the tomahawk was directly over guests' heads. Technifex did an excellent job with the effects overall, and it's interesting to see them come together. A few years after the ride's debut, they would end up making the famous water tunnel effect for Islands of Adventure's Poseidon's Fury attraction. As stated earlier, this isn't the only dark ride at the park, because number 5 is Deep Earth Exploration, also at MGM Grand Adventures. This ride was pretty much a precursor to the Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure. Now, in case you've never heard of that ride, it's pretty much a dark ride motion simulator hybrid that seats guests in a moving vehicle while presenting the story through screens and a full 3D environment. Deep Earth Exploration operated similarly, except the screen was actually attached to the inside of the vehicle. In that regard, it was kind of like if the vehicles on Star Tours could actually move through an environment. This system, known as a dynamic motion cabin, was built by famous Swiss manufacturer Intamin. It was even prominently featured in one of their ride catalogs. According to the Dark Ride database, it was the world's first dark ride with a motion base. In the Vegas ride's case, the screen would play a movie showing guests descending down into the crust of the Earth. At select moments, the windows on the sides of the vehicle opened to expose the surrounding physical sets. Initially, these sets were flat and poorly lit, but renovations by R&R Creative made them gorgeous. There were 3 physical sets on the ride: the Crystal Cave, the Ice Caverns, and the Volcanic Caverns. The volcanic caverns had what appeared to be bubbling magma with heat pumped into the room. In another passageway, there was a giant tentacled monster that would attack the vehicle. It would only consist of 2 tentacles because it was only meant to be seen on the sides. Though images do exist of several scenes, there is actually no on-ride video of this attraction, or at least none that's immediately available today. You see, there actually used to be a POV video available online. It was available on now-defunct American animatronic manufacturer AVG Technologies' website. Though the website is actually still online, the video is inaccessible. It is possible someone out there still has the video, so hopefully it won't be lost for much longer. Number 4. Escape from Dinosaur Beach at New Jersey's Dinosaur Beach. This often forgotten theme park existed in the South Jersey city of Wildwood. Originally known as Ocean Pier, then Hunts Pier, then the new Hunts Pier, then Conker's Conco's Party Pier, this boardwalk amusement park was turned into a dinosaur theme park in 1996, the height of Dinomania. Jurassic Park 2 was in development, and kids were crazy about dinosaurs throughout the decade. However, despite how popular dinosaurs were in the 90s, this park only lasted for 2 years. As a result, documentation of the attractions is incredibly rare. This footage from the park was just posted recently, and even still, there is no footage available for the short-lived dark ride Escape from Dinosaur Beach. This ride sat guests in small jeeps and took them through a dinosaur holding compound with several animatronic dinosaurs. Details of the ride are pretty scarce, and many of the existing photos are extremely compressed. From what I can tell though, there were some pretty cool looking effects, such as this effect which appears to be a falling tree. If anyone can send me high quality versions of these images, that would be amazing. I have a feeling they exist, because some of these images do have high quality black and white counterparts. Now the ride itself was a collaborative effort. According to the Dark Ride database, the attraction was designed by R&R Creative, the same company that worked on the set for Deep Earth Exploration. The theming and animatronics were provided by Sally Dark Rides of Jacksonville, Florida. Finally, the ride system, surprisingly enough, was provided by Italian manufacturer SBF Visa, the same company known for its compact family coasters. Though Sally has documented many of its attractions over the years, there is, to my knowledge, no video available of the attraction as it existed at Dinosaur Beach. Likely due to underwhelming profits, the pier ended up closing in 1998, and it was purchased by the nearby Maury's Piers the next year. The pier is now mostly a storage area, though it also has Ripley's Adventure Maze, Captain Jack's Island Grill, and Steak Bros cheesesteaks and fries. As for the dark ride, it actually has a happy ending. Though the ride system sat in storage for over 20 years, it was eventually purchased by Sanchez Village Amusement Park in East Dundee, Illinois. Though the system and vehicles were the same, the name and theme were completely changed to North Pole Expedition. Instead of a trip through a dinosaur compound, you're sent on a trip through the North Pole and Santa's workshop. Part of the ride takes place outdoors, while the rest takes place inside. The whole thing is a bizarre experience that feels like something you'd see in a dream, much like Dreamieland. The fact that this was once a dinosaur ride is pretty crazy. But this system still exists, unlike the next ride on the list, which also happened to be dinosaur themed. Number 3. Mystery Ride and Dinosaur Den at Massachusetts Mountain Park. You may not have heard of this place unless you live in the Springfield area, but this was once a popular amusement park in Holyoke, Massachusetts. First opening as a trolley stop in 1894, this park ran all the way until 1987. During its lifetime, it saw a few roller coasters and some lost dark rides, the most interesting of which is undoubtedly Mystery Ride / Dinosaur Den. Now this ride likely would have been lost for good if it weren't for the journalism of Jay Descharme of KarenandJay.com. A few decades ago, he posted an in-depth article on the park and this attraction. In it, he went in detail about what he remembered about the ride and shared some interesting photos. According to Descharme's recollection, the ride had a pretty complex history. It originally started as a fun house and then was converted into a classic pretzel-style dark ride called Laugh in the Dark. This right here is the only photo known to exist of the attraction. Guests rode in small cars past effects like falling barrels, and it ended with a classic loud horn jump scare. By the late 1950s, the park decided to give the dark ride a major renovation, adding an upper level to the ride building to put more scenes in. This elaborate new version of the ride was named Mystery Ride and was themed to a jungle in Africa. Now, this next detail is pretty serious, but it's important in terms of the ride's history. Unfortunately, many jungle-themed dark rides at the time contained racist imagery of indigenous Africans. These had exaggerated features and stereotypical appearances. It's uncomfortable to look at, but it was part of history and it can't be sugarcoated. In addition to a jungle environment, the ride also contains several other displays, including a disturbing scene that was supposed to represent hell itself. This image appears to have been taken during the scene's creation. The two blank figures at the bottom are likely devils before being painted, but this scene looks pretty disturbing out of context, as if the people at the bottom are badly burned but are somehow enjoying the flames of hell. Near the entrance and exit doors, there were extremely unsettling masks that rocked side to side on the wall. Later on, a character from Where the Wild Things Are was painted there as well. According to Ducharme, the whole attraction had a cartoonish but slightly nightmarish tone that was meant to excite riders without actually scaring younger guests too much. Later on, another variation of the ride opened in 1963. That year, the park rethemed the attraction to dinosaurs, capitalizing on 1960s Dinomania. The building was remodeled to resemble a cave with two dinosaur figures added to the facade with flashing eyes and moving jaws. This new version of the ride is also when the Where the Wild Things Are imagery was added. The ride itself followed a twisting path filled with a surprisingly large number of scenes. Ducharme remembered the dinosaurs, cavemen, and strange psychedelic artwork scattered throughout the attraction. This caveman, by the way, looks like a badly sunburned guy with no nose. The doors also had images painted on them, like this tiger and this cross-eyed phantom-looking dude. There was also this figure of a Frankenstein's monster that went up and down behind a wall. Over time, some of the more elaborate figures were replaced with painted cutouts behind protective screens as vandalism became more common. Much of this imagery was pretty surreal, like whatever this creature in the center is supposed to be. Another strange scene was this one of 4 children holding flowers with the phrase "flower power" above them. The ride remained a favorite for decades, and Ducharme's own father worked on it as a ride operator for years. Sadly, the ride building did not survive long after the park shut down. Vandals repeatedly broke into the abandoned structure. Furthermore, when the ride cars and track were sold to a traveling carnival company, the buyer attempted to take the dinosaur figures with them. Tragically, they underestimated the weight of one of these dinosaurs and dropped it onto the midway. They ended up just leaving it there, causing vandals and weather to destroy it. Even worse, years after the park's closure, the building was destroyed in a fire in the early 90s. Today, pretty much nothing remains of it. This photo was taken decades ago, and the whole area is an empty field nowadays. If it wasn't for Jay Ducharme, this ride may have been truly lost forever. So huge shout out to him, and I will link his article in the description. Number 2, a trip to the moon at Brooklyn, New York's Luna Park, part of Coney Island. Okay, we're going way back with this one. How far back? Try 1901. Yes, over 100 years ago. First debuting at the 1901 Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, this early dark ride was perhaps the most revolutionary and ahead of its time attraction ever built. And the crazy thing is, hardly anyone knows about it. Though photos exist of the exterior, there are no photos of the ride system itself. Of course, there's certainly no video of it since it was 1901. However, there is a patent that goes in depth on how the ride works. In many ways, this was the earliest version of a motion simulator, but with practical effects instead of digital screens. Instead of physically traveling through space, the ride stayed almost completely stationary. Guests boarded what looked like the deck of an airship. This ship was suspended by cables, which allowed it to gently rock back and forth to simulate flight. But the really impressive effects happened around the riders. Along the walls of the building were several enormous painted scenery panels depicting clouds, the moon, and the earth below. These panels were arranged in layers, and during the ride, the panels slowly moved downward at different speeds while the platform rocked and fans blasted wind towards the riders. As the scenery slid downwards past the riders, it appeared as if the airship was rising higher and higher into the sky, passing through clouds and eventually heading towards the moon. After reaching their quote-unquote destination, guests would disembark and the experience would turn into a walkthrough attraction of a fantasy version of the moon. There are actually photos of this set still available. On the moon, guests were allowed to walk around the papier-mâché landscape and meet the Selenites, who were the inhabitants of the moon in H.G. Wells' book, The First Men in the Moon. Guests also visited the palace of the Man in the Moon and watched his dancing moon maidens. Finally, they exited the set through the mouth of a large monstrous creature named a mooncalf. Overall, this attraction was absolutely astonishing for the turn of the century. Hopefully I'll get to give it its own video one day. And the same goes for number 1, Hellgate at New York's Dreamland, also part of Coney Island. Yep, another lost Coney Island dark ride. Originally the site of the submarine ride, a unique attraction in itself which I'll discuss in the future, Hellgate took its place shortly after it debuted. Although photos do exist of the exterior, there are no photos of what it looked like inside. Luckily, thanks to an article by themed entertainment historian Barry R. Hill of Rivershore Press, and other press coverage at the time, we have a good idea of what Hellgate was like. Starting off, visitors were met with a memorable marquee, which depicted a large figure of Satan looking down at them. From the queue, guests could watch passengers board their boats, which appeared to descend into a large whirlpool. Apparently, the ground floor of the ride was a big pool of water with what looked like a whirlpool in the middle. But this whirlpool was merely an illusion, and was a trough made out of wood and iron. Yes, trough, not tro as I used to pronounce it. The boats appeared to spin before dropping down underwater. In reality, this was another illusion, and the modern-day equivalent is probably something like the one on Flug des Pharaoh at Germany's Belantis and other Hafima water rides. Here, riders would spiral towards the center and dip down into an underwater tunnel while staying completely dry. According to Hill's article, the majority of the ride was underground, where riders drifted past scenes representing the underworld. The sets were said to be largely made from paper mache, with everything colored deep red and artificial paper flames. Satan himself was supposedly a live actor in a Halloween costume, appearing on rock and watching the arrival of more infinite losers. The scenes in the underworld played out like a series of moral lessons. First, a materialistic woman is admiring a fancy hat in a mirror and is thrown into a pit by demons, supposedly punishing her for her vanity. Another victim is apparently thrown into a pit just for drinking whiskey. Well, I guess I'm going to hell because I had a shot of honey whiskey on my 21st birthday. Finally, a third person is sent to hell for stealing money from a friend's purse. All the while, Satan looked on happily while fog effects and screams filled the air. At one point, the ride actually got religious, and an unnamed curly-haired character gave a sermon explaining that certain vices will send you to hell. He added that going to church is much better for the soul. In what's apparently an exact quote from the ride, he said, "Gentlemen, if you wish morality to work on men's souls with a force of castor oil, you ought to pay your preachers more." Near the end of the ride, an angel appeared to zipline overhead on a wire playing a trumpet. Satan, horrified at this, jumps into the pit himself, and good triumphs over evil. Finally, the boat returned to the surface and re-entered the boarding station. Sadly, this ride would last only a few years, because in perhaps the most unfortunate coincidence in Coney Island's history, Hellgate was destroyed in a fire in 1911 that started inside the building. According to reports, workers were using hot tar to seal up the wooden trough. Suddenly, incandescent light bulbs exploded, which ignited the tar. This burned not only the ride, but the entire amusement park to the ground. Some have speculated over the years that Dreamland was financially struggling at the time, and the owner may have started the fire on purpose to get an insurance payout. But this is unconfirmed. All I can say is that plenty of the rides in this video deserve their own videos. And I don't think I'm done with Lost Dark rides either, as there's tons of them. So feel free to comment them in the description. And speaking of comments,
now it's time for the comment shoutout program. This is where I take 5 random comments from my previous video and read them out.
These comments come from my video on Dinosaur. Alyssa Oxley 6456 says, "I remember that movie growing up, but didn't realize it was that bad." Metal Monster 34 says, "A ride with Megadeth music would be badass." Lily Frappier 602 says, "I have a picture of me and my family on this ride. Everybody is looking up at the Carno in general awe and surprise. I'm the only one hunched down and staring straight ahead, bug-eyed and screaming, beet red." V4 Nilla Kid says, "This ride was shockingly intense for a Disney ride. Scared me to death when I was a kid." And Brendan Ralph 3807 says, "Loved seeing the closing day videos. It's wonderful to see people mark the end of something they obviously care about so much in such a fun and creative way."
If you want to see your words in my next video, leave a comment down below and it may be selected. Please note though that inflammatory or spam comments will not be read. Thank you all so much, and if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so once again at the link in the description. Thanks for watching, everyone. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on social media on Instagram and Facebook, or you can check out my website at themeparkcrazy.com.
And I'm on TikTok.
This is Theme Park Crazy, and I'll see you all next time.